Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another EA Zoom meeting. Today we are joined by Eric Myers, Marie O'Neill, Ryan Evans, and Marty Dixon, Sue Hillyard, and myself, Robin Grabfelder. And we're going to take a dive into the current planetary alignments. And we're going to start discussing Neptune ingress into Aries, which already happened, and the Saturn ingress into Aries, which just happened early this morning. And we'll discuss a little bit about Jupiter going into Cancer and Uranus going into Gemini. So, Marty, do you have that first chart?
Let me share here.
A lot of change going on.
Let's see, my screen is different. I'm looking for my share button. Here we go. And does everybody see that screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go to full screen, bear with me. Okay, we're going to start with Neptune in Aries. Neptune in Aries, yeah, Neptune to Aries, which was March 30th of this year, 2025. And I had a little bit to say about that, as you can see, because I'm very Neptunian. But I just want to say that there's a lot going on today, and let me try to make sense of this here. Bear with me just a moment. There's an awful lot going on today, and we have a lot of different levels of consciousness on the planet today. Some of my spiritual teachers, really great spiritual teachers, all all agree that we have close to over 100 levels of Earth consciousness, of levels of perception or consciousness on the Earth today. And I'm sure there's many more, but that's sort of the consensus among great minds, that we have well over 100 levels of consciousness. And what I tell people when I greet them nowadays is I'm just fine, because I'm always fine. That's sort of a hopey platitude. But I'm not okay because of the current political atmosphere. I am not okay. And I am doing and saying and trying to live and express what I can about the current political atmosphere. And so one thing that I've come to learn, of course, as we all know, is that we can't change our loved ones. We can't heal them. We can't think for them. They have to evolve on their own. And I think that's so important, because when I deal with people and, like I said, the current political atmosphere, sometimes I just have to put a sock in it and not talk. That's the kindest thing to do, because people's eyes are not going to be opened until they open them themselves. And sometimes the kindest response we can have, politically speaking, is to just not speak and just love another person and show them that we love them with our actions. And the cosmos will only reflect back to us that which we already know on some level. So deep in our subconscious collective psyches, this is the story, the most evident story of our current political and social climate is in the outer planets. Okay, we need to try to get along, even if that means stifling ourselves for the sake of relations. Silence can be golden and profound. It's sometimes the highest road to take. At the same time, much of the problem, so to speak, that we have in our current political climate is the normalization of what the extreme right is imposing and getting away with currently in our nation, saying, oh, we can indoctrinate you, we can proselytize, we can dictate, we can fire people, we can do whatever we want, and that's just normal because we're doing it for the good of others. Well, it's not normal and it's not good. And what we can do to counteract this type of far right. Hello, go ahead.
You're good.
Okay. What we can do to try to counteract this type of far right proselytation and indoctrination is let's see, what was it? Is to speak up in our even in a normal voice or in a quiet voice. Just speak up and speak your mind. We don't have to be militant. We just have to be consistent and truthful and insistent and what's the word? Assertive. So what we need now more than ever with the South Node in Virgo and the North Node in Pisces is we need Virgo discernment right now to really study what's going on, not only in the chart, but in the political and the social arenas, really study and really know what we're talking about and approach subjects carefully and with care, and try not to go overboard, because that would really rock the boat. We want to have careful, studied discernment and know what our facts are and try to speak our truth to the best of our ability and keep it up. And that is our armor, and that is our shield, is careful, studied discernment and reason, Virgo reason. With Jupiter ingressing to Cancer on June 9th, the need for personal truth is even greater because Sagittarius naturally squares Virgo. The need to be true to ourselves is exaggerated. And I want to really stress this, and then I'll like I said, I'll hand it over to the rest of you, but our dreams are going to tell us everything we need to know. And I would love to explain some that I have had lately. I don't know if we have time, but our dreams are going to tell us the truth. So ask before you fall asleep the answer to a question, and ask for the telling dream, and it will come to you, because dreams come from that tiny space of the heart inside of all of us that helps us to become co-creators with Creator. We are infinitely creative beings. And if we listen to our dreams, they're going to give us the truth of a situation. And sometimes it can be quite shocking, not at all what we thought with our waking mind. We're in constant celestial motion, constantly on the hero's journey of returning to who we really are, until we choose to rise above the earth journey and ultimately unite with Creator, who is omnipresent. So I'll just go on to the next slide here. Like I said, I did these in a hurry, so they're kind of, let's see if we can get to the next slide. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so Neptune ingress to Aries on March 30th of 2025 of this year. Neptune is ultimate meaning, and this is huge because, as you know, Neptune has a cycle of about 165 years. So it has not been in Aries for that long. And what I do is I talk about the Civil War times and how Neptune ingressed to Aries toward the end of the Civil War. And we're there right now. So we're approaching what you might call a reconstruction period after the end of a supposedly or an implied civil war, a war of words, a war of ideals, a war of politics, so to speak. But we're there on the heels of the Civil War now. We've gone full circle with Neptune ingressing to Aries on March 30th. So Neptune is the archetype of unworldly and eternal brilliance, discovery, and artistic, scientific, and universal genius. So there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs coming through at this point. And we want to look forward to them and keep heart, because there's a lot of great minds and breakthroughs that are going to come through in realization and consciousness that wouldn't have been possible had we not had this sort of breakdown in society and societal roles and sort of warring factions amongst the populace in terms of ideals. But once recognized and observed, the corresponding signatures can be recognized and realized in a chart. This is called observation and correlation. This takes practice and experience and reverence and an open mind. But once we start to look at the symbols here, we can see how there's great breakthrough for not only great thinking and brilliance and free thinkers to come forward and be prominent, which we're looking for. We need a really good leader, right? But also for amendments to be made to the Constitution. This transit from Neptune's home sign of Pisces to Aries represents a whole new evolutionary cycle for every individual among the collective. And because Neptune contains an amalgamation of all the 12 signs, this represents the ultimate shift or renewal from egocentric centered consciousness to unity consciousness. there's hope. If I can get this, there we go. Okay. Okay, we're not going to go there. Bear with me. It just says this chart of the beginning of the Civil War was April 12th, 1861. And in this chart, you can see that Neptune was at 0 degrees Aries. And we're not going to go into this one either, but it's just a chart of the definitive battle at the Civil War, which was the Battle of Shiloh on April 7th of 1862. At that point, Neptune was at 1 degree Aries as well.
Marty,
Yes.
why don't you go back to the ingress and let's get some input from everybody else about that.
Okay,
And
there
then
it
we-
is.
And then we can move on to
Saturn.
the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to comment a little bit. Yeah, Neptune and Aries, well noted with the onset of the Civil War. It's an amazing correlation, and here we are again with fractious, political scene. The way that I kind of think about it is the idea almost of what are we willing to die for. One of the most inspirational quotes that I've heard was Martin Luther King, who says something along the lines that if we're not willing to die for what we believe in, maybe we're not suitable to live, or something along those lines. And then on the other side of the coin, you can have people who fly airplanes into buildings, like on 9/11, and they're more than happy to die for what they believe in. So this is the question: what are we willing to die for? And the people who fought the Civil War on both sides were willing to die for that cause, and many did. And Martin Luther King challenges us to live a life with clarity of conviction that we're willing to die for. So I don't want violence, and I'm not predicting it, and I don't do predictions, and I don't believe astrology is about that. But I do think that bringing in spirituality and my understanding that we're all eternal, we are all part of this endless dream theater. And in this Aries, in this one little behavioral kind of way I'm operating in this one little lifetime, how could it be most meaningful? Neptune, how could I be an embodiment of my soul purpose? And even to the degree, am I willing to die for it? Because with Neptune, we understand, hey, you know what? Everything is eternal. So how can we be an instrument, Aries, for something that's connected to soul, to evolution, to processes that are meaningful at the most profound level? So how do we behave, Aries, in alignment with our soul, is what I think the spiritual curriculum is.
Right on, man. And I'll piggyback right there, if you don't mind, saying awesome. And so what that curriculum I'm feeling is when in my book, Neptune is our our personal capacity for forgiveness and acceptance and being able to moderate ourselves through the bliss experiences of human life and the tragic experiences of human life. So I have words like acceptance and forgiveness and inspiration. And we had some time in Pisces where it felt like there was this, all right, I'm waiting for the first, no, the second, no, the third, depending on your religion, coming of the Messiah to save us. No, the aliens are going to come. I know if we just elect a president who's gonna, and they'll fix everything. And I think we had a lot of these illusions. I don't know, maybe the leftover remnants of the American dream that we're now emerging, and this is Neptune and Saturn, but we're now emerging into this place where it's like, okay, who is it up to? I know who it's up to. Me. Am I going to find like some guru to fix it for me? Well, I kind of know the things that I need to do. And so Aries, this motivating operative for survival to care for self, and part of that survival is based on our capacity to accept, forgive, and allow to be ourselves to be inspired. And so when I hear us, talk about division and divisiveness and war and the Civil War was at this time, well, I think that's because we couldn't find healthy ways to honor and respect the sovereignty of other people. Now, let's face it, some of that wasn't respectable or honorable, and as is now. And so now we come to, well, how can we have the conversation of collective survival without being, devolving to that place of violence and excessive offense. What do you think?
Yes. And then when Saturn joins Neptune, it will make it all very real. We'll have to face the realities of how we're going to find our way.
Yeah, thank you, guys, for the viewpoint on that. And of course, I'll always add mine too. And when I think of Neptune, Neptune is our spiritual planet. That's its goal. And it operates, of course, in each of us differently. It's based on its placement, based on, its aspects to other planets. And so when you look at Neptune in this ingress chart and you want to get to the core, you have to look at where it was in the natal chart for yourself, because it's always about the evolution. That's what progressions do. That's what transits do. It's about the evolution of you, of who you are. With Neptune being the planet of spirituality, when it moves into Aries, Aries is that spark, that initial divine spark of idea, of coming from the heavens, from the universe, doing its best to be implanted here on the earth plane. In this particular case, Neptune, Aries is, of course, ruled by Mars, has great affinity with Mars. Mars is sitting in Cancer. This means that Neptune not only is in Aries, but it has to answer to Mars in Cancer. What is Cancer? Cancer is about the family. It's about the home. What is the family? What is the home? And it's not, and if you look at the mother, because I see Cancerian energy as the mother, she is not divisive. She doesn't believe in dividing left or right, up or down, yin or yang. It's all together. It's one. She's pregnant with both, with all. Therefore, in my view, Neptune is really, and what we're dealing with here on this earth plane is all designed to get us to the point of acceptance of the opposite, of working with the opposite, whatever that opposite is, and merging, because there's truth. There's an element of truth in everything. The whole piece doesn't have to be truth, but there's elements of it. And so, we go back to the Civil War, we can go back even further. And how are we evolving? Because evolution is not in a straight line, it's in a spiral. And and we've made progress. I'm not talking political. I'm just saying we've made progress as a species from where we were back during the Civil War. I, for one, wouldn't be sitting here if we hadn't made progress. And I'm sure some of you wouldn't be either. So when I think of, and so we're looking at that Mars in Cancer, not only is it in Cancer, but you've also got a trine to Saturn. And that adds gravitas and depth to the Neptune in Aries. That helps because that's going to give structure and form. It's in Pisces, of course, which is about our spirituality again. And it still goes back to dissolving illusion and moving beyond our beliefs and merging with consciousness, of which all of us, regardless of what side we're on, are a part of. We are not separate. So that's my view.
I have one little technical thing I want to mention and ask your mindset here. Neptune will retrograde back to Pisces, then it will return to Aries and settle in for good. And so when we're looking at this ingress chart, do you look at this as the chart for the entire time, or the next ingress that will be next year and how things are set up then? Or what's your perspective on that one?
How do you look at it, Eric?
Well, I mean, for planetary ingresses, and with Pluto, you could also have three, is what we had when Pluto got to Aquarius. It dipped back into Capricorn twice. So we had 3 times that Pluto got into Aquarius. I don't know. That's why I bring it up. I mean, if we look at this as relevant for the first little chunk of Neptune in Aries, that's only for a few months, not for 14 years. So I don't have, when I look at the, or think about the sense of Neptune in Aries, I'm looking at it and looking at the transits that are playing out during the whole passage and all the different interactions, the conjunction with Saturn, this perhaps, whatever's happening elsewhere, rather than just looking at one ingress chart as the definitive, kind of statement. So that's why I raised the question, because I'm not sure that for only a few months before Pisces, if this is still relevant for 14 years.
That's a really good question.
I would look at both.
Yeah. And, I think that one little point that makes me think of, that we should look at more than one is the fact that, there's this whole lot of Aries energy in this chart, but there's, almost an equal amount of Pisces. And it's like we're at the, we're at the world point, the Aries, the 0 Aries point, crisscrossing back and forth. We have been, even with, the Mercury and Venus, transits, we had the forward, backward, and forward, the retrogrades over that point. So to me, it feels like we're in a transition period.
Yeah, we definitely are.
And the birth canal, the contractions pulling us back and forth, pushing us out.
It's like we're finishing up because we have to finish up the Pisces energy. And, hopefully, because remember, each sign is the antidote to the previous sign. So Aries is going to be the antidote for Pisces, for whatever the shadow is in Pisces. And at the same time, what we want to do is pull forward into the Aries what we've learned and how we've grown and developed and integrated in the Pisces, pull that forward into the Aries ingress.
And at the same time, the nodes, regress. They move from Aries back into Pisces and
Mhm.
on. So
Yeah.
When you look at Pisces, what is the highest aspiration for Pisces? I mean, because remember, even if we're looking at just our country and we're looking at our chart for this country that a lot of us use, Sag is the ascendant, and Sag is an aspirational sign. So we're looking at an aspiration, a goal. It doesn't mean that we always reach the goal. It does mean that we keep shooting for that goal and getting closer each time.
Acceptance, forgiveness, and inspiration.
Mm-hmm. And we know that when you think about the Neptune 180 years ago, we don't know because I don't remember that incarnation, or even if I was around. But I wonder about the people who fought that war here in America and what the aftermath was for them personally. I'm not talking about financially, I'm talking about to their soul, to their family that maybe they were in disagreement with, or to basically to their evolution, because it's really about the evolution of our consciousness.
Well, here we are
Yeah.
again. Let's hope
And
we can get it right.
Well, maybe not get it right, but
A little more better.
do a better job.
So
Yeah, we
I've got a
can.
quick, oh, I want to address quickly the ingress because it's really, really important. This is a very poignant ingress, Pisces to Aries. I mean, Taurus and Gemini were already out there, but subterranean to the visible, we're looking at so here's a question, and maybe there's just philosophical contemplation, but yes, you're gonna go swimming. All right, we're at the lake cabin. It's gonna be awesome. All right, hey, we remember last year was so wonderful. Yeah, and we get our swimsuit on and we run down to the lake and we get in and we go, oh my gosh, it's too cold. And then we get out a second and we're like, oh gosh, do I really want to do this? Well, yeah, it's the lake. It's awesome. It's free. I mean, how often do we're only here for a week? And then we get back in and we're like, oh gosh, yeah. And then maybe there's even another time where we get back out and say, okay, I think I want to do this. Yes, yes, we're here. I got my suit on. Let's go. And then we finally get in and we swim and we have a grand old time because at that time it's 2 p.m. and the water's warmed up. When did we first get in the water? When did we choose to go into the lake? Was it the first time or the third time or fourth time or whatever?
You could argue that you chose to get in the lake as soon as you had the thought.
Aha! Thank you for substantiating the premise of my forthcoming book, which will not be necessarily discussed at this time, but you heard it here first. So yes, the intention before we even got there, that's correct. But the act of, the Aries of, the waxing square of, the crisis in action of Aries, that can be really scary for Neptune. And we might be like, okay, well, here I am opening to the universe and I'm going to spread the good word. Okay, maybe I'm just going to go back to where it's safe. No, I made the commitment and, the growth cycle dictates that I emerge into Aries. Okay, well, let's retrograde back. Okay, yes, I have to be here. And so that kind of feeling of between Pisces and Aries, I mean, it's scary. We're looking at a lot of trepidation, and it's so comfortable underground where it's safe. In the womb, the arms of the mother, that's fine. Let me go back to Dream World and rewatch that Netflix series. That's fine. Oh, wait, Aries, I got to do something. And so what we're feeling here, through February, kind of that, oh, whoa, I know I know I have to, but can I? Oh, wait, I feel the power. Oh, wait, I need to go back and find some inspiration and some meaning, some acceptance and forgiveness so I can truly come back out in my power. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so I want to bring in this vector is as I look at this chart and I know where we're headed, and I want to kind of scooch us along a little bit because we can't talk about this in isolation. It really is a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and right now is pretty tight as we're speaking here at the end of May. And so Saturn-Neptune, I want to bring in a couple points here about this. I agree with what was said earlier about Neptune kind of being these aspirations, heaven, the ideals, yes, and Saturn, the earth, reality. And so, more or less, we have the issue, can we bring heaven to earth? Neptune, Saturn conjunction. And I want to rewind a little bit. And in the year that I was born in 1971, Neptune was opposed Saturn, and it's the tightest aspect in my chart. And John Lennon put out the song Imagine in 1971. And to me, this is the emblematic song of Neptune and Saturn. And, he's talking about imagine there's no, boundaries between the countries. Imagine if we all live in peace. Imagine Neptune, that we can bring that consciousness to the way we exist all on the planet. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. What I think Neptune Saturn is about is stoking us to imagine bringing heaven to earth, and also looking at the current reality and looking at it and saying, holy cow, we are extremely far away from that right now. This does not look like heaven. So Neptune Saturn goes with disillusionment. It can go with fatigue. It can go with, disappointment, resignation. Here we are with all of these, social and political and economic problems, and we're giving money to rich people. Why? It's ridiculous. And there could be a million other things. And it's like, oh my God, if we all just came together, no pun intended, talking about Lenin, we could exist. Oh, and why can't we? And it's so disappointing that there's this polarization. And so it's dealing with this issue. Can we coexist together in a sacred way or not? And if not, then we got to deal with all of the psychological disappointment that we're not doing that. So that's the challenge. Are we going to come together or come apart? And I think Neptune's heavily emotional energy. And I know I carry with a Neptune Saturn opposition, I carry an ongoing sense of disenchantment about the state of this planet. And I think that is very palpable right now with a lot of people with Saturn conjunct Neptune. If only we could do it, but we're not doing it. So
And
that's the feeling.
and at the same time, I know we've made some progress, because when was this cycle with Neptune and Saturn? It happens every 30 years?
37-ish, yeah.
37 or something like that. Okay. And so what did we do? How did we evolve during that last cycle? Because we're at the tail end getting our report card.
Yeah, well, the last time Neptune was conjunct Saturn was the late 80s. And you had a lot of major changes. Uranus was around then too, because Uranus was very close to Neptune in the late 80s and early 90s. So you can't really separate that one out, because it was almost like a triple, like a stellium, Uranus, Neptune with Saturn. But nevertheless, what we had in the late 80s and early 90s was a dissolution of boundaries, Soviet Union collapsing, the Berlin Wall coming down. We're going to come together, but also other political estrangements, like I'm saying. Usually we get a gift and a challenge, the dark and the bright.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sense of the world changing back then. And what the hell are we going to all create? But we did see that dissolution of boundaries with the Soviet Union coming apart at the last conjunction.
Absolutely. And what we usually also have happen is a lot of fear that comes up when there is change. People who, or, you know, each of us have fear that comes up, and how do we respond to that fear? And when we think about the cycle of Saturn and Aries, as it's been pointed out, this is going to be on the world point. If I'm not mistaken, it's been hundreds of years since we've had this conjunction happen on that, or really near that world point.
It's never happened on the world point. I mean,
Or-
not as far back as we can trace.
Well,
It's been close,
pretty
like
close,
within a
yeah.
degree, but never exactly on the
Yeah.
0 point.
So it's that bigger cycle of the Saturn, Neptune, Aries conjunction that is really ending. And to me, all the other, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, I was just gonna. Well, yeah, okay, sure. Henry David Thoreau said, "If one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams, they will meet with a success uncommon in waking hours." Blah blah blah, 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 more.
And yeah,
He also said, "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That's where they belong. Now build the foundations under them." And I think those of us who have been around the block a few times and understand that there are systems that can be put into place for sustainability and survival if we did it right and actually applied everything we know about alternative energy and agriculture and the solutions are right there. It's just making the change from system, from the prior system to the new system. That's the growing pain, and that's one of the birth canal kind of feelings that we're in right now. So piggybacking on what Eric was saying, I think that was really right on, man.
well, the difference between the conjunction now versus the last one was in Capricorn, and which had a lot more to do with things on a collective sociological level, because Capricorn involves infrastructure and organization of things of that nature. This one in Aries, I want to bring in another dimension of it. And that is what Marie was saying about spirituality. And Marty, I should say, also talking about our spiritual life. And one of the things that I believe is very relevant for Neptune and Aries, especially with Saturn here, is taking responsibility for our own spiritual awakening. So often we have been so influenced by others, religion, other spiritual paths, external things. And it is so common for people to abdicate their authority and to follow, to be obedient. And Aries is about being the writer, director, and starring actor of our own dream theater, of our own consciousness, of our own co-creative relationship with our soul. We don't get instructions from anyone else. They're doing their chart. Everyone else is involved with what they're involved in. How do we take independent responsibility for our own spiritual destiny, our own connection with intuition, with inspiration, with our chart or other sources that inform us? It's really an inside job, and it's an independent job. And I think part of this is cleansing or releasing a lot of the external influences of society and religion and everything else. And we have our own unique spiritual destiny.
And to add to that, Saturn is also about blockage. And so there becomes that fear, that block to being able to do that, because, I mean, and I'm not saying that it's not something we're here to do, because I believe we are, and we have to overcome the blockage. And having Saturn and Neptune together in Aries at the world point, that tells us too that this is D-Day for us to actually start doing that. It is quite fearful to take control of your own life.
Yeah.
to listen to your own inner promptings and not what society says or not what the church says, whichever church you belong to. It is very difficult to do that. And it's not something that happens overnight. And so I do believe that everything that we've been experiencing in our lives, in our lifetimes, plural, has led us to this time. I mean, we see what's happening with, with religion, with political systems, with all of that, and people putting their faith in something outside of themselves. And so I agree with you on that, Eric, that and it's still going to be painful.
Yeah. And even astrology, in my view, is an area where this is playing out. I almost see it as a game now because it happens every day and it happens with almost every client where people say, "Oh, well, is that going to go this way, or is that good, or is that bad, or is it going to? Do you think that's going to go well?" And I always redirect. I don't know. It's up to you. This is your curriculum. And I
Yeah.
give the analogy that astrology is one's energetic structure, kind of like a car, but you're the driver, and how things
Right.
move are up to you. And so,
Yeah.
but people are so eager, almost programmed. It is ubiquitous. And I've had this conversation 100,000 times and counting, where people do not want to take responsibility. They don't want the
Right.
answer. They want to know how it's going to go. And I keep saying, it's up to you. It's not up to my interpretation. It's not up to the astrology.
Yeah.
It's your curriculum. It's
But
how
see,
you manage it.
but
And people are so eager to give their power away. They don't want it. And I constantly have to redirect people on a daily basis to take responsibility for their own astrology.
and
That's why they
because
elected a dictator.
well,
Right.
this is we've been programmed this way for thousands of years. We cannot expect that programming to go away overnight. It takes time, and it takes people who are doing what you're doing, Eric or Ryan, or to direct people back to themselves, which is why I love coaching, by the way. You don't tell people what to do because that takes their sovereignty away. But
Right.
people don't want to take responsibility because if they fail, it's on them. If they fail and somebody else told them what to do, they can blame another person or another group or whatever rather than themselves, when in fact none of us can get to enlightenment unless we go through the soul and merge the personality with the soul, which means having the personality do the bidding of the soul. And that is where we're headed. It's just that a lot of people don't know we're headed that way. And even if they do know, they don't necessarily want it because it's scary.
Maybe that's why it was meant for us to elect a dictator, so that it would open everyone's eyes to what giving your power away and not taking responsibility for your own choices
Yeah,
and taking your own direction in life, what
because
those consequences are.
Yeah, we have to, because we have to see the shadow, and the shadow has to get louder and louder for us to pay attention, and to not only pay attention, but do the Aries and take action.
I would say it's screaming in our face.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, though.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're all waking up according to our own timing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going on. And so thinking of along the lines of religion and Neptune, Pope Francis, he was one of the only popes that I actually liked, but neither here nor there. But look at, who was elected, and, the meaning of that, the bigger picture of that. And that goes back to the Neptune Aries conjunction too. And anyway, that's.
You folks want to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, so real quickly, let me try to change this slide here. Bear with me. Okay. This is a chart of the beginning of the Civil War in April 12th of 1861. And as you can see, bear with me just a moment, let me get my cursor. This was the chart of the beginning of the Civil War. Neptune was at 0 degrees Aries. And, pardon me? And then on March 30th of 2025, Neptune was 0 degrees Aries. And I just want to point that out to you because it is significant. And we're dealing with subtle energies here. I want to thank everyone for your input. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we're dealing with subtle energies and quantum consciousness. And Neptune seeps into the consciousness like water, like what Ryan was talking about. So we're talking about consciousness seeping in, or revelation seeking into our consciousness. And here we go. So in the next slide, if I can get this to work. The next slide is an old slide. It's from December of 2023. So don't look at this outer ring. Just look at this inner ring here and here. And this is the Battle of Shiloh. And the Battle of Shiloh on April 7th, 1862, it was a moment of reckoning. It was a moment of quantum reckoning because legend has it that blues and grays sought shelter together in a church, and there was a wounded Confederate preacher's son who led them in the Lord's Prayer. It is a profound story where they all came together and found unity and comfort, and neither was blue or gray. They said neither one was a color. And so here's that chart right here. By my cursor again. Neptune at 1 degree 55 Aries. And it was a time when it was a definitive time in the Civil War because word traveled by foot and by horseback, not by telegraph. They didn't have it in that area at that time, but by foot and by horseback and by quantum migration, who knows how, through the ethers, that we are all brothers. We are all the same. So here we go. And then this one is that's not the right chart. So let me just go back here for just a moment. I just want to point out that Neptune will transit to 1 degree, 55 degrees Aries on June 4th of this year. And I think that's very significant because that's just a few days before Saturn goes to Aries, right?
No, Saturn will be there today.
Oh yeah, Saturn is there today. Thank you, Marie. And then Jupiter to Cancer on June 9th.
Is on the 9th. It's on the 9th.
Uh-huh. So let's move right along here. So let's go to Saturn in Aries. And like I said, Neptune will approach 1 degree 55 minutes of Aries on June 4th. And Saturn will be in Aries on June 9th. I can't see my own chart, but I believe that's the date.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody want to comment on that?
Well, it's interesting because Leo now, Mars is in Leo, which goes back to the sun in Gemini. Huh. Yeah, that's that air, fire that we've been talking about, the element there. So a lot of words are going to fly. And, well, this is today, isn't it? Words are flying.
Yeah. I really pride myself because I ran this chart exactly when it happened, when it went to 0 degrees Aries. I love synchronicities like that. But one person that I listened to made a good statement, and that person was talking about political scene that we're in right now. And he said, turn your anger into action and turn your desperation into determination. And I love that. That just really speaks to me because I'm going to go ahead and say this. I tend to really say some really heavy things, but our beloved leader, Lyndon Johnson, passed away, I believe, in January of 2020. And I left astrology for about 3 years because I was heartbroken and dumbfounded and grieving. And I had to get perspective, and perspective is Aquarius. Of course, you rise up above the smaller picture and you see the bigger picture. And during that time, I realized that I need to think for myself and do for myself, and not listen to all the various voices that were around me. And I came to the conclusion that I was going to live my life by what is essential, Pluto, and to live deliberately, Aries. And I was just going to live every day as if it were my last, so to speak, and choose life and move on. But I am living deliberately, and she really gave me that gift of seeing what's important and what we need to really concentrate down here on Earth in our little lives is live each day as if it mattered and try to make a difference and take responsibility for yourself. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing now in the charts. But someone else go ahead and talk
Yeah, I
about
want to
that.
pick up on what you said. You said concentrate. And my favorite individual with Saturn and Aries is Albert Einstein. And both Saturn and Aries can have some aloneness. Saturn can be, hermit-like at times, and Aries can be independent. And Albert Einstein is an excellent example of someone who spent an enormous amount of time alone. And it was because he limited distraction and he went into himself that he was able to intuit the most amazing, understandings of our universe that through concentration is, I think, a part of Saturn and Aries is focus, discipline, concentration. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be theoretical physics. Of course, it doesn't. But when we are more self-aligned, when we go within, when we have healthy aloneness, we can things can emerge. Even with Neptune, intuition, inspiration, imagination, things like that can emerge within the crucible of our own concentration. I think way too often people are, like I said earlier, focused on what's happening outside of themselves and how am I going to fit in, or who's going to tell me what to do, and I got to go to church, or I got to go over here. And Saturn in Aries is saying, no, you don't. You just have to be in your own sovereignty, and then magic can happen within that healthy alone time, which I think there's some of that gift. Now, the challenge might be is that a lot of people are not comfortable being independent and alone. And Saturn and Aries might challenge people, and there could be loneliness rather than healthy alone time.
That's really good. Because that Aries, it's like I said, it's the spark. It's that initial idea that is coming from the divine and doing its best to manifest or be implanted here on the earth plane. On a higher level or esoterically, it's interesting that Aries is ruled by Mercury. And that is because, Aries is so action oriented. It needs to, if it can think first before it acts, if it can, work with its perceptions, if it can get the lay of the land before it acts, it does better. Aries, as we know, is usually not the general making the plans. It's the person who is on the battlefield, who is out front plowing and, doing what it needs to do to win, because Aries is definitely about that. And when I think about Saturn in Aries, I know that, what is Saturn trying to bring through? What is Saturn trying to have us bird within ourselves? And we do have to be like that hermit card in some ways, as Eric was saying, where we actually have some alone time so that we can find our balance and find what we want. And we can work with our shadow, because I still say that Saturn is going to bring up our shadow, and we have to work with it so that we can grow and move forward. And Pluto is there too, because that's a sextile between Saturn and Pluto. So what's in the undercurrents, what's in the underworld within us that wants to come back up?
It's our brilliant revolution. Uranus ingress into Gemini, where all the new information comes, the new solutions come. We say, oh, yeah, I guess I can rip up the sod in my front yard and plant some tomatoes. Oh, yeah, what a great idea. Oh, geez, instead of the corner smoothie shop or coffee shop, how about the corner microgreens warehouse facility? The solutions are out there. And so thanks, Marie, for bringing in Pluto, because that's one of the things I wanted to bring in, the harmony that is potentially impending here between Saturn and Pluto and Uranus and Neptune and everybody here, all these major players that as we, and to the degree we can do this Aries right consciously, meaning, hey, I got to do what I got to do for me. I've got to take care of myself, my loved ones. I'm in a semi-survival mode. So rather than fear, I'll choose courage and deliberation and wisdom and thoughtfulness and relative conservatism as I grow and expand and empower myself in the world. And I'm helped by understanding the Pluto in Aquarius part that on a collective level, there's some shadows that are emerging. So it might be really important for me to have some ways and means of self-sufficiency. And on the other hand, you know, all I got to say is AI, and who knows what is in store for the future with Uranus in Gemini. And in between them, how can I still maintain my solidity, my groundedness, Saturn, and my inspiration, my enthusiasm, my forgiveness, and my acceptance and ability to go with the flow, Neptune? Then we can maybe ride this wave in a very functional and effective way without letting the fear take us over. But all we need to do is let the fear take us over, right? And then we succumb to these shadows. We take it all for granted and we let these opportunities slip by.
Well, yeah. And looking at this chart, Pluto is the lead for this chart, because Pluto, well, this is set for Oregon, but Pluto is going to rise first, and whichever planet is rising first is the engine.
Yay, transformation.
Well, and the beauty of this chart also is that the sun is at 4 degrees Gemini, and it's in the spot where when Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus all line up, it will be right around that 4-degree mark.
In a very harmonious aspect.
Exactly. In a sextile and trines.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, so it's definitely moving forward, and there's something, I believe that there's something positive will come out of this. We're not going through this for nothing.
Well, I wanna comment on that. With the trines and sextiles, there is opportunity, and the Uranus-Pluto conjunction began in the mid-60s, and here we are at the trine, almost it is 60 years later, and we've arrived at the trine. My sense is that the harder aspects, the square, opposition, etc., there is more evolutionary urgency that can be part of that. The challenge of the trine or the sextile is complacency.
Mhm.
And, for instance, one of my issues that I speak about a lot that is dear to me is about integrating modern understandings into astrology and integrating quantum physics, integrating transpersonal psychology, and things of that nature. And that to me is very Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini. But the issue of the trine, of the sextile, if you could throw in Neptune, making it a nice little triangle, is people might say, oh, that sounds nice, but it's not urgent. The astrology I have is not broken, and it doesn't need to be modernized and updated in the ways that you're saying. It's been totally fine and serving people for thousands of years. So, these things sound pretty interesting, but, I don't feel the urgency in order to go study quantum physics. My astrology works just fine. So the challenge with these, and I think particularly Neptune and Aries, is we need to get passionate. We need to get assertive about reform and change, connecting in to the Gemini and the Aquarius. My experience is that people generally are pretty complacent. And this is why squares and oppositions tend to manifest with more turbulence and events, because there's more urgency. So with the trine, it's nice, it's there, it's potential, but we need to get passionate. We need to get active around doing things that are along the lines of things that are revolutionary.
Well, that probably won't happen until we get to the sesqui-square. And I think that's in the 30s between Pluto and Uranus.
I don't necessarily think that it's all on hold until then. I think it's a general evolutionary curriculum that there's going to be lots of ways in people's everyday lives in many different avenues of expression where there's going to be change and incremental developments and reforming in a variety of ways. I only chose one issue that is relevant for me and what my passion is, but I see this as far more global, far more universal in all areas of life. So I don't necessarily agree that there's no change and growth for the rest of the decade. I don't agree with that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
to your point,
Saturn and
Eric,
Aries itself is Saturn and Aries by itself is motivational and pushes us to move forward. And then when Uranus goes into Gemini, that's going to be very inspiring with, lots of ideas and desire for change.
yes, and to both of your point, it will be up to us to take that action and
Yeah.
to incorporate it and move forward and not be complacent. To your huge point, Eric, I totally agree with that.
That's the
Yeah.
key with Aries, is that we gotta be the change we wish to see. Like Gandhi was saying, we can't let just everything outside will take care of itself. Somebody else will do it. The Aries focus is it's incumbent on each individual to represent the change, to be in the more developed version of their chart. All of us have the responsibility
Mhm.
to do that. And then if we can, then we can manifest a lot of this cool Uranus, Gemini, Pluto, and Aquarius stuff is available. But we gotta
Yeah.
we gotta plan for it. We gotta prioritize it.
And take the
People,
action.
yeah,
and,
except people don't change unless they are pressured
That's what I'm saying.
to
Usually,
change.
I wouldn't generalize it 100%, but the general trend is people are complacent, like I'm saying. But a lot of people do grow, and there are people who take on difficult tasks. There's a lot of people who are on an Aries kind of warrior path. I have seen that as well, and that is the invitation for more of us
Yeah.
to do that, myself included. I've been really lethargic and apathetic and disillusioned, and I've been very just checked out these last couple years, and I, with the Aries focus, want to get my fire going and start, investing a bit more myself.
Well, and it depends too on what your natal chart is asking of you. I mean, you still have to look at that because sometimes the natal chart is saying, don't get involved, but do something else because it's all about you evolving yourself.
Well, we've
You know
all got
what's
Aries somewhere, and it was Goethe who said, if everyone swept in front of their own steps, the whole world would be clean.
This is true. This is true. It's like take care of yourself. And as far as doing your own inner work, that has to be first.
This is really interesting. Real quickly, when I look at this chart, because I hadn't seen this before talking to all of you, but you can see that Saturn is separating from the North Node, right? It recently conjuncted the North Node in Pisces, and it's applying what you might call a closing opposition to the South Node in Virgo. And the way I read that, and from listening to all of you, it's very clear to me that we all need to step up. Like Eric was saying, a lot of us are complacent. But a lot of us can learn to be warriors. I'm one of them. I'm finding my voice. That's why I'm here. Thanks to Robin and Sue and the rest of you. I'm speaking up. There's something that, yeah, hi, Ryan.
High
There's
fives.
there's something that everyone can do. You can write your congressman. You can speak to other people. You can listen to people that you don't agree with and not argue. You can, I do believe that this is a time when we're really applying to that South Node opposition because we're leaning toward taking incremental steps, as Eric said. We're leaning, I do believe we're going to have amendments to our Constitution before the end of another year. I believe we're going to have amendments that will help to prevent another potential dictatorship from taking over. And I think we're going to do it. What is it? The meek will inherit the earth. We little meek and mild people are going to speak and have a voice and work incrementally as well as we can with our congresspeople and our representatives to have a voice and like I said, create amendments. The amendments can be corrected and we can create new ones so that we can never face this potential dictatorship again. But like we all can find our warrior within, and there's steps that every one of us can take every day. If it's only just talking to a neighbor or doing what we're doing right now.
So here's where it's important to note in this Aries process that Chiron and Eris are conjoined in this sign. And the taking our power back and reclaiming our energy and having, and especially those of us born during the last Chiron Eris conjunction are facing monumental efforts of having been disempowered lifetime after lifetime. I mean, raise your hand if your past life story involves being burnt at the stake. And, a lot of our hands might go up, because of so many lifetimes. I mean, it's like the echo of the great, the greatest story ever told. How do the meek inherit the earth? Or how do we as just the common people take our power back and live happily as humans on this planet without the wanton destruction and rape of the planet, etc. I mean, discuss. So we're not just looking at, oh, hey, everybody step into your power. We're looking at, hey, everybody, reclaim your ancient feeling of disempowerment and having been snubbed and weakened and do that. It's a monumental healing effort in order to reclaim that power. But the payoff is if we can, then we could Saturn build something that is in alignment with our Neptunian dreams. But
Well,
again,
to be able to do that, each individual has to look to and work through their own shadow.
that's what I'm saying, yo.
And they have to be willing to do that.
Ryan, that's great because again, that speaks to that Virgo South Node that's pretty much opposite Saturn right now, which can represent past life persecution,
Sure. Totally.
religious and political.
Total. Nodal in conjunct to the Chiron Eris conjunction. So it's like this is some work here.
It's a lot of work.
It's not, I mean, Aries, for some of us, I mean, the whole theme, I mean, the whole theme for years, an awareness of the shadow side of masculinity or patriarchy, etc. So it's not just, my own personal empowerment, it's the effect of, the last 10, 12,000 years of oppression, upon us. So this is, not to be underestimated, the Herculean effort it is to really reclaim our Aries power here in a healthy way, in the way that it's meant to be, courageous and protective and self-loving and radiant and solid. I mean, that's what we're trying to individually and collectively reclaim those fragmented parts of us where that radiance and that power, were misgotten or developed in unhealthy ways. So how can we develop a healthy relationship with the divine masculine? And that's a much bigger theme that's going on a collective level right now, including our own personal self.
This is true. And remember, this Earth plane, it is a Ray 4 planet. So it's harmony. We get harmony through conflict, unfortunately. So.
No, you don't. No, just kidding. Oh, see, we laughed. Oh, harmony through conflict. You said it, Marie.
Shall we move on to Jupiter in Cancer?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we're approaching 90 minutes, so shall we talk about this and call it good, or?
It's
Yeah,
up
that'd
to
be
you,
good.
Sue. It's up to you.
Well, I mean, I have, I don't know if we're going to officially get to Uranus and Gemini on the slide. We've already talked about some degree, but I do have one more point I do want to make about Uranus and Gemini. I don't know if that needs to be later or if I can just do that now.
You can do it, and we can
Okay.
address it further later.
Okay. One thing about Uranus and Gemini that when I think about Uranus and Gemini, I think of paradox, and I think about information and the complexity of thought, and with Uranus, even the paradoxical nature of reality. And one of the paradoxical things that I think might happen with Uranus and Gemini is that it's a nuanced discussion, because part of the evolutionary purpose is to question everything with Uranus and Gemini. Who says? There's other perspectives, there's other sides to the story, and everything's relative. That one thing is not necessarily better than another, multiple perspectives. And so there can be the dismantling of things by questioning, by always bringing in the who says kind of very provocative kind of jab. Who says? There's many different things. But then on the other side of the coin is that what Sagittarius, the polarity sign, teaches us is that we can have distinctions. Compassion is more moral than murder. Helping your neighbor is more moral than ripping them off. There can be things that are more developed or more conscious or more moral or ethical. That is true. And so on one hand, we need to question everything and see everything's relative. And on another hand, we have to also preserve the idea that there are necessary distinctions that we must preserve and make, and not to dissolve into everything being relative and anything goes, because that's chaos. So this is the tender, delicate balance of Uranus and Gemini is how do we do that? How do we question everything, but still maintain that there can be sensible, reasonable understandings of hierarchy as well. Like compassion is more moral than murder, and many, many other things. So I wanted to mention that it's a juicy kind of paradoxical thing, but that's, I think, part of Uranus and Gemini.
I like
Yeah,
that
that's really going to
Venus
come
is
into
there too.
play. That's going to
Yeah.
really come into play with AI.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
But it's
so I said what I said. So Jupiter and Cancer, let's talk about that one before our time is up. So I'll just start it because I'm a Cancer sun and Jupiter's going to hit my sun. And I've actually studied this recently because I'm about to have this conjunction in a couple of weeks. And what I believe Jupiter and Cancer is about is, well, very simply follow your heart. What do you want to do with all the choices that's stemming from your own emotional desires? So, real quick here, Jupiter hit my sun when I graduated high school and I went to college 36 years ago. And I had to decide what is my heart want? What is the direction I want to take in my life? 12 years later, Jupiter hit my sun in 2001. I got divorced. And now I got to follow my heart. What is my new life going to be? And I got to get the new direction. And then 12 years later, another major relationship just happened to end right when Jupiter hit my sun again in 2013. And all three times in my life, I had the same kind of issue come to my plate. What does my heart want now? I've got change, I've got new direction, I've got new things. What does my heart want? And I'm at the same place right now. What do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to live? I don't know. What does my heart want? So Jupiter in Cancer picks up on what we were saying before about this. Take the responsibility to follow from your own inner guidance, from your own emotional foundation. And this is consistent with a lot of the astrology that we've been speaking about. We're being so trained to be influenced, to follow the curriculum, to follow the religion, the education system, the community, the parents, the employers, whoever. Now I believe a lot of this astrology is about taking responsibility, and Jupiter in Cancer is what is the emotional investment in your destiny, what feels right. And no one can tell you what it is. It's only found in feeling centers. And so to live in connection with heart and instinct is a big part of Jupiter in Cancer.
I love that. And building on that, the moon, ruling Cancer is in Sagittarius. So to me, it's about following your own intuition and what it is, like you said, what does your heart say, and feeling it.
Well, and Cancerian energy is always about the great mother too. That nurturing. How do you nurture? How do you define family? How do you define home? How do you define anything that part of you that is home, finding right home? And Jupiter is going to bring that up, in my opinion, pretty, it's going to be big. We won't be able to avoid it. And based on what's going on in our world, we do have to look at what home is, what family is, who our tribe is. That's how I see Jupiter in Cancer too. And it is going back to the great mother, who is the mother. When I say the great mother, it's the mother of us all.
And so what could mess us up in this process?
Don't go there, Ryan.
Well, it's very easy because Jupiter, we can think that we can carry 14 blueberry and custard pies as we're walking down steps. And sometimes those blueberry and custard pies tumble. And so we have to be very mindful with Jupiter to not let the heart or the emotions get over exaggerated. It's very easy, especially for us Cancerian types, to become hyper emotional. So if we go too far, Jupiter, into the realms of feeling too much, we got to, be a little mindful and, keep that check. I don't know if it's square Saturn or anything like that, but oh, look at that. So maybe keeping that in check a little bit and saying, okay, well, let's keep this real. So, in a good amount of healthy reality and observation, checking in, hands on your heart, make sure your fingertips are touching so there's good connection. Speak up, heart. Okay, what's the truth here? Because a little mind or a little fear in that could make it expand and explode, and we want to just be mindful for that one. Okay, all righty now.
Well, and it's going to change every 2.5 days.
True that.
If I could jump in here, that's great on the heels of what Marie and Eric and Ryan just said. It's interesting to me that I keep looking at the same things in the chart, and I keep seeing this Virgo South Node, and it's retrograde right now. It's going forward, so to speak, but it's going to be going direct very soon, and it's going to come into sextile with that Jupiter, right? They're a closing sextile with that Jupiter. And so right now what I see is we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer for a year, right? And so what I am afraid of, if somebody else brought this up, it might have been Ryan, that things are probably going to get worse before they get better in terms of our political climate and the war, the supposed war that's going on between the left and the right, because Jupiter is internal experiential knowingness. And many people can try to hold on to their belief systems to try to hold on to deep internal security. And we're going to see that. I think we're going to see people cling to their belief systems. No, this is the way it is, and I'm right and you're wrong more than ever. And we have to be open and find, in my opinion, a sort of a Virgo generosity saying, well, we can all talk. Let's talk. Let's just sit and talk. And then we also, those that are very much conservative or very much to one side or the other may tend to overly postulate and try to indoctrinate due to the fear of losing their inner security, Jupiter and Cancer. Folks have to come to natural law conclusions on their own. We can't force it. They're going to have to see what's going on, and sometimes silence is golden, and they just go, oh gee. I'll give you a really good example. I write grants, and I do event coordination. I do music events, and NEA just got canned. And when National Endowment for the Arts just got canned, I screamed and I scared my cats. They jumped off the couch. And I thought, I've been doing this for 10 years. How can you just take this money away from us? We need it for programming. And it dawned on me that that's just the way things are, and that's just the way they're happening, and I'm gonna have to try to deal with it. But everyone has their deep internal inner heart. That's something that David talks about in this book, if you can see this book. And that's your Sagittarius knowingness. And it's a deep internal heart truth. And I do believe that we are going to get on the right track if we just try to stay on it, to put one foot in front of the other and speak our truth and try to walk our talk.
Yeah, and our country is a Cancerian country, and we have a tendency to sometimes be warped when it comes to family and protection of what we perceive as family. And so, we can certainly get an expansion of this with the Jupiter in Cancer, which you don't want. But for each individual, you have to look to where this is in your natal chart. What house is it in? That's going to tell you the arena of how this is going to play out for each individual.
Yeah, I want to just reiterate that. I have been doing a lot of thinking about this because it's pretty soon. Early June's only 2 weeks away. Um, and so it's starting to come into focus. And I have been meditating on more of the darker or unconscious side of Jupiter in Cancer. And I do think that whole tribal clan mentality and Jupiter unbalanced or functioning darkly, can be, uh, you know, um, pretty narrow and rigid,
Hmm.
and it needs to be our way. And
Yeah.
those tendencies can be part of this if we're not following our heart and we are following more of the conditioning. And there is that potentiality. I also think that Pluto and Aquarius, in a much different way, can also have darker cult-like group
Hmm.
community types of themes as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
configured differently astrologically, but we are seeing this, and I don't want to get political, and I don't want to talk about political parties necessarily, but just tribalism in general is something to be aware of.
And that's
Yeah,
exactly
especially
where we
since,
are.
yeah, well, this ingress chart for Jupiter in Cancer, I mean, it's exactly square Neptune and Saturn in Aries. So
Hmm.
it, that tribalism that we have in the United States, make America great, comes head to head with that desire we're going to have to assert ourselves and our individuality and break free of the illusions.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues that we have, and I think it's an issue around the world, is people haven't individuated, which is, it's good to be in a tribe, but you still have to know who you are in the tribe and not, and I think this is the issue that we're having, regardless of the political side. You've got
Well, that's
people
the
who are in a
Aquarius.
tribe. Hmm?
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
Aquarian
Yeah,
influence.
yeah, they're in a tribe, and when you're in a tribe, you have to go along with the tribe, with whatever the tribe says. And that is not healthy. You need dissension. You need healthy argument is good, in my view. And we have to find our voice, as Marty was saying, to speak your truth, whatever that truth is, inside the tribe. But there is so much fear. I mean, to me, it's blaring, the fear, because there's a lot of people who don't believe a certain way being in political groups, but they fear saying anything because of the retribution.
Yeah, that's that Jupiter conjunct the Mercury in Cancer, that fear there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and another thing that David pointed out in her moon book, it's really interesting, is that Jupiter, which is a Sagittarius planet, naturally squares Virgo, which is truth and veracity and understanding and clarity. And so there's going to be, I think, a whole lot of more people that are emotionally involved with their belief system saying, no, this is the way it is, this is the way it's got to be, until their eyes are opened. And what I was trying to say about me being a grant writer and writing National Endowment for the Arts grants is this is hitting people where they live. I work with musicians, and some of them are right wing, and I'm saying there's no money. So what's going to happen? We can't really argue with people. Jupiter in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. We have to let them see for themselves. It's
Right.
going to hit people where they live, where they feel it, and that's what's going to wake them up. That Jupiter in Cancer conjunct Mercury in Cancer, and they're going to find their own deep internal heart truth, so to speak. But Sagittarius also, which rules, well, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, but Sagittarius also naturally squares Pisces. And Pisces is ultimate understanding and ultimate conclusion and ultimate enlightenment. So I think that by sinking really low, I think we're going to go really high, and I think we're going to go there on a quantum level. I give it about a year, but I think people are finally starting to wake up and see for themselves, maybe I better think outside the box and be a little bit more open and agreeable to what everybody else needs, and let's all work together.
I don't know. I'm not a pessimist by nature. At the same time, I have known people personally who have known that they were wrong, but refused to admit it.
Yes, there's a lot of them.
Exactly. And just double down on it.
Yes. We're
That's where
seeing it.
Eris
We're
comes
seeing it.
in.
Yes, yes. The Trojan horse. And that plane is a Trojan horse.
One more
So
time,
there's
Robin, say
Eris.
that again.
That plane that they want to get, that
Yes.
he wants. That's that Trojan horse,
Yes.
symbolized by Eris.
Robin, how did you know that? I came to that on my own. How did you possibly? This is amazing. Yes, it's a Trojan horse.
Yes.
The Saudi Arabian plane, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. He
God bless
ordered
you,
a
Robin.
plane.
What, Marie?
He ordered a plane, didn't he? And
Well, it's a gift.
It's a Trojan
Well,
horse.
it's a gift. Yes.
Well,
It
let's
very
all
much
pay our
fits that
respects
symbolism.
to Eris. And
yeah,
trust
yeah,
that,
exactly.
trust
I
that,
still,
what will need to happen will happen.
absolutely. I mean, I still remember the days when I worked in insurance, and we were always advised never to take gifts from agents or clients or anybody, because if you do,
No kidding.
Those days are gone.
We're on
Well,
the same
thanks everyone. I've
wavelength.
got a
Yeah.
got a jam. It's been an honor being with you all, and I really appreciate working together here to try to unravel the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know that we've done that, Ryan.
Really awesome. Oh no, we have. I think there's been a lot of things revealed here that some
We pulled some threads anyway.
Yeah, we
Ryan,
pulled some
Ryan,
threads.
do you have any final thoughts before you take off, or do you have to go now?
Yeah, I guess real quickly, the final thought is, it's whenever there's these outer planetary ingresses, and three major, four, five, boom, 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 boom. We're looking at rapid change, and so for all of us, I think it all comes down to maintaining an alignment with our heart and ourself and what we need, and in survival mode, but in a courageous, all right, things are building and growing, and how can I integrate more of this wisdom into my own life? And it can be really inspiring and enthusiastic. Or we can approach it all from fear, like the world is going to explode, and all of our, everything's bad that could happen. And while there's always the possibility for shadows to occur, our ability to maintain our own equilibrium amidst that is really important right now. And
Yes, Aries is the
and
pioneer.
to not take and to not be subservient and just take it too. And so finding that healthy balance in Aries, where we have a thorn, but we're not shooting it out, but attacked, we still have healthy methods of self-protection, but we don't have to be aggressive in that. So finding that healthy balance is going to be a lot of key here over the next couple of years. And that's what I know. So thanks everybody for playing along.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining
Bye,
us.
Ryan.
Yes.
All right, be well.
Yeah, I'm also gonna exit too.
Oh, do you have
Okay,
any?
bye, Eric. Good to
you-
see you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bye, Ryan. No, I don't have any closing. Just I guess I've been looking at the calendar for many years, and 2025 has been on my radar like many other people, and I'm excited for a lot of the shiftings that are occurring, because when planets move to a cardinal sign, then that's initiating, and having Aries emphasized, Cancer emphasized, are both cardinal signs with Neptune, Saturn, and Jupiter. But I also have to give a plug for Uranus moving to Gemini, being a Uranian, and and having this, I've been waiting very patiently. And so I'll have one more point because I'm a Uranian, as I'll say about this, is that surprisingly, what I want to close on is to reflect on Uranus in Taurus for the last 7+ years, is that we have all been challenged to be more embodied. And I think Uranus and Taurus has been a revolution, I know for me, of understanding that the more grounded, the more embodied we are, that the more we slow down, then we could be a vessel for soul or spirit, has been Uranus and Taurus. And with that solidification, hopefully, that we've all achieved. Now, from that foundation, let's go into the mind. And I think this world is really ready for getting more smart and complicated and nuanced and learned about things. My view is that I've been disappointed with the simplicity, with shortcuts, and with just reading a Facebook post rather than a news story. Uranus and Gemini is a real evolutionary challenge and opportunity for us to develop intellectually. And I think this is what we need on this planet. And that is my prayer, is that people further open their minds. And I really am so looking forward to Uranus and Gemini. So I'll just close giving voice to that.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
And thanks for joining
And-
us.
Absolutely. Okay.
And
Yeah,
I'm
bye-bye.
going to take off too, guys.
So
This has been a
what are your
pleasure.
final thoughts, Marie?
Oh my goodness. I mean, yes, I agree with what has been said before, but I also know that we have no clue what an individual's consciousness is. When we think about the consciousness of the country or the state or the city that we live in, we don't know what is actually going to manifest. We can look at the signatures, we can look at what Aries, what the ingresses can portend, but what actually comes out, we don't know. Because it's just like looking at the chart of a famous person. We can talk about the energies and what we feel is coming up for them, but without knowing their consciousness, we don't know what actually is manifesting. And so my view is that we have to, each of us has to look within ourselves to see what it is, what our shadow is, what our gifts are. We all know what is coming for us. We feel it. We feel the energy of it. We may not know what is actually going to manifest, but we can feel it. If we've been doing our work, our spiritual work, then the work that is coming may not be as intense. If we haven't done any work at all, then we know it's going to be more severe. We're going to get a cataclysmic something happening. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you
All
for
right,
joining
you
us.
guys are welcome. Bye-bye.
And Marty, do you have some final thoughts?
Oh, golly. I would just say that I would revert back to how we, at the very beginning of our conception, we were a human heart and nothing else in terms of cells dividing. And I just would say that we need to get back to the human heart and look within, each one of us individually, so that we can come together in a Piscean way and work together to correct what needs to be corrected in our government and our society, and move on positively. And we need to work together. That's all I really have to say at this point. And we will. It's part of Native American prophecy. So that's something I have to talk about next time if I have a chance.
Awesome.
Definitely.
How about you, Robin? You got any final words? before we wrap up?
Just yeah, with the Saturn and Neptune going into Aries, we need to be pioneers and keep our vision positive and forge the path that we want to see.
What y'all said. I totally concur. This has been so much fun and always interesting. And we will continue this again in 6 to 8 weeks, maybe.
Something like that.
Thanks for
We all-
putting this together, Robin.
We all want the same things.
We do,
Yes.
and we're all in this together. That's that's what we all have to remember. We're all in this together.
I think that's part of the lesson of Pluto going into Aquarius and then the Aquarian age, is realizing on a global level that we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard, but stay in the fight.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Till next time.